Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabham Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabham Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Vaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 13. Vilajamanaya Yasya Statum Iksha Pate Muya Vimohita Vikatante Mamaham Iti Dirdhiya Vilajamanaya Yasya Statum Iksha Pate Muya Vimohita Vikatante Amaham iti dirdhiya Vilajamanaya yasya Statum iksha pate muya Vimohita vikatante Mamaham iti dirdhiya Vilajamanaya yasya Statum iksha pate muya Vimohita vikatante Mamaham iti dirdhiya
Vilajamanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
Satum ikshapate muya
Satum iksha pate muya
Vimohita vikatante
Mohita vikatante
Amaham iti dhodhyaha.
Amaham iti dirdhiya.
Vilajamanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
Shtatam ikshapate muya
atum ikshapate muya
Vimohita vikatante
vimohita vikatante
Mamahamiti durdiya
ham iti durdiya.
Vilajanmanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
Statum ikshapate muya
satum ikshapate muya
Vimohita vikatante
vimohita vikatante
Mamaham iti durdiya
amaham iti durdiya.
Sajamanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
statum ikshapate maya
satum ikshapate muya
vimohita vikatante
vimohita vikatante
mamahamiti durdehiya.
mamaham iti durdiya.
Vilajamanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
statum ikshapate muya
statum ikshapate muya
vimohita vikatante
vimohita vikatante
mamaham iti durdiyaha.
mamaham iti durdiya.
Vilajamanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
statum ikshapate muya
statum ikshapate muya
vimohita vikatante
vimohita vikatante
mamaham iti durdiyaha.
mamaham iti durdiya.
Vilajamanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
Statum ikshapate muya
ikshapate muya
Vimohita vikatante
mohita vikatante
Mamahamiti durdiya
ham iti durdiya.
Vilajam
Yasya ham iti durdiya. Vilajamanaya yasya
Statum ikshapate muya
ikshapate muya
Otta vikatante
mohita vikatante
mamaham durdiyaha.
mamaham iti durdiya.
Vilajamanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
statum ikshapate muya
statum ikshapate muya
Vimohita vikatante
vimohita vikatante
Mamaham iti durdiya
mamaham iti durdiya.
Vilajamanaya yasya
Vilajamanaya yasya
statam ikshapate muya
statum ikshapate muya
vimohita vikatante
vimohita vikatante
mamaham iti durdiyaha.
mamaham iti durdiya. Vilajamanaya, by one who is ashamed. Yasya, whose, statum, to stay. Iksha, pate, in front. Amuya, by the bewildering energy. Vimohita, those who are bewildered. Vikatante, talk nonsense. Mama, it is mine. Aham, I am everything. Iti, thus vituperating. Dirdiyaha, thus ill-conceived. Translation: the illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence. Sorry, I'll start over. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position, but those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of it is I and it is mine. Purport: the invincibly powerful deluding energy of the personality of God, or the third energy, representing nations, can bewilder the entire world of animation. But still, she is not strong enough to be able to stand in front of the Supreme Lord, the Godhead, where she is powerful enough to mislead the living beings. And the primary symptom of bewildered persons is that they talk nonsense. Nonsensical talks are not supported by the principles of Vedic literatures, and first-grade nonsense talk is, it is I, it is mine. A godless civilization is exclusively conducted by such false ideas, and such persons, without any factual realization of God, accept a false God, or falsely declare themselves to be God, to mislead persons who are already bewildered by the deluding energy. Those who are before the Lord, however, and who surrender unto Him, cannot be influenced by the deluding energy. Therefore, they are free from the misconception of it is I, it is mine, and therefore they do not accept a false God or pose themselves as equal to the Supreme Lord. Identification of the bewildered person is distinctly given in this verse. Maharaj, would you like to speak on this?
Yes. This nation was founded on the principle of in God we trust, one nation under God, many nice slogans. And it would be nice if we had continued along those lines, gaining more trust in God, finding out who God is and how to put our trust in Him and how to serve Him. But rather, we've gone in the opposite direction. We've exclusively taken God out of all the schools, all the intellectual circles, and we've come to the point of atheism in the name of being religious, but basically atheism. God has no form, God has no name, God has no activities. So this I, it is I, means they think they're God. He wants to be equal with God. Soham, the impersonalists, Mayavadis, think that they're one with God, or they sometimes elect another person to be God, or everyone is God, and then it is mine is the regular principle. Is this land is my land, this land is your land, it's our country. How did you become the owner of it? It was owned by some other people were here. Now it's ours. And some time it'll be owned by someone else. So this is all false. This is nonsense. You don't own it. It was here before you came, before all of us came. It'll be here after. Everything is owned by the Lord. Ishavasya sarvam jatkincha jagatyam jagat tena jaktena bhunjita magadaha kashasadam. In the Isha Upanishad. Everything animate or inanimate is owned and controlled by the Lord. But even though He's the owner, control of everything, everyone should just accept what is set aside for them as their quota and not accept other things, knowing well to whom it belongs. Everything belongs to God. We don't own it. If we owned it, when we were forced, the property doesn't come, the house doesn't come, the fame, the karma comes. The karma comes and takes us, along with the subtle body, the mind, intelligence, and the false ego, carry the soul, the jiva, into his next body, according to his work. And sometimes he acts like an animal, like a dog. Because I'm a dog. Sometimes he thinks he's a demigod, and now he's enjoying himself. But actually, we're not these hallucinations. We're not this body, and we're not these identities. But everyone's talking like that. My team, my country, my family, my car, everything related to who, what, to the body. And what is the body? It's just a machine. It's a machine that the living entity, the soul, is given to try to fulfill his desires. He has so many desires, and we know a father, he wants to please his son, so he gets him toys, he gets him machines to play with, try to fulfill his desires. But they just keep wanting more machines, more toys. And even when they get old, they still want machines, more toys, more bodies, more birth, more death, more hospitals, more old age, more disease. And this just goes on and on. Samsara. Until they come to the realization that I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul. And my eternal constitutional position, servant of Krishna. And when we know that, then we're free from bewilderment. And if one doesn't know that, then he's captivated. He's on the same level. Yasyatma buddhi kuna petra datake. Svadi kala tradishu boma ejadi. Yatirti buddhi salile nakarichij. Janeshu abigeshu seva gokara. One who thinks this body made of three elements, kapha, vayu, and pitta, according to Ayurveda, bile, mucus, and air. Depending on these constituents, one gets a particular body. But if one thinks that I am this body made of three elements, kunape tridatuke, these three elements, and yasyama buddhi kunape tridatuke, swadi kalatradishu, this is my family, he thinks this is my wife, and this is my land of my birth is worshipable. We are so worshiping the land, we're willing to give up our sons' bodies, our bodies, go and fight for that beloved, worshipable land. Boma Ejadi means he worships the land of his birth. Boma Ejadi, Yatirti, then he goes, or a person who goes to a distant place where there's some water and he takes a bath and he thinks that's a tirtha. Rather than hearing from the holy persons there, he just goes to take a bath. Tirti Budhile Nakarichij Janeshu Abigeshu Seva Gokara. Such persons are on the level of dogs and asses, cows. Those are just like animals. because that's what animals think. So the whole world is shrouded in ignorance, and it's the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, this is Krishna himself, coming as the golden avatar, dancing and chanting his enchanting song. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And this enchanting song takes away all the bewilderment, all the illusion, all the madness, all the anxiety. We just have to go on chanting. And any problems that are there, they'll be cleared away, just like the sun. When the sun makes its appearance in the morning, you may not see the sun itself, but already you see his rays are removing the darkness. And as it becomes more established in the sky, then in his full glory, all the darkness is removed.
Thank you, Maharaj. So wherever there is darkness, there can't be the sun. But wherever the sun is, there can't be darkness. So if one keeps himself in front of the sun, then there's no darkness. And similarly, if one keeps Krishna front and center, then there's no darkness for that person. But as soon as one turns their back to Krishna, just like turning their back to the sun, then there's darkness, then there's Maya. So with this conception of I and mine, nothing can actually go well for anyone, because this is the material conception of life. Thinking that I belong to America, I'm a male, so whatever an American male does, that's what I do. And whatever an American is supposed to have, that is mine. And anything related to me or my family, these are all my things and my possessions. But we can see that that conception of life doesn't actually amount to anything for anyone, because just like Maharaj was saying, when one leaves the body, none of these things that they're saying are mine come with them. So as long as that conception is there, any activity is essentially useless. Even if somebody gets all the wealth or a nice car, eventually the car breaks down or has to be taken away by the bank or something like this. But even if nothing happens to it, once the person has to leave the body, they no longer have this nice car, nice house, or any of these things. So in the purport, Prabhupada explained that a godless civilization is exclusively conducted by such false ideas. So we can see the entire world is running on this idea of I and mine. Even some group that seems to be very nice, some sort of welfare group, such as Save the Whales or some sort of Go Green thing. It's all based on the concept of I am this body, and so anything in relation to me, I'll help those people or those things. So we can see even in a family, someone might love their child very much, and that looks like, okay, that is a very selfless love. They clearly have compassion for this other living entity. But what about if there's a quarrel between this family and the neighboring family, then if that soul that was in the body of the child was just born one house over, then there's actually no more compassion between those two people. So because people are thinking in this concept of it is I, it is mine. So I'm this body. So if it's in relation to my body, then it's very nice. But as soon as it's in relation to the neighbor's body, then I don't care about them at all. Whatever happens, fine. Or in relation to the other country's body, then I'm not interested. So one actually needs to have a realization of who they are and who is God. So again, just like with the sun, when one sees the sun, then they can also see themselves. If they're in a pitch dark room, you can't even see yourself at all. But as soon as there's light, you can see. So when the sun is up, one can see oneself. When one can understand Krishna, they can also understand that I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. So on that platform, one can help all other living beings. But on any materialistic platform, there can't be any real help given to another living entity. The comparison is often given saving the dress of a drowning man. So one might do so much material welfare activities, make so many nice organizations, help so many different groups. But if there's no spiritual knowledge given to them in any way, it's simply saving the dress of a drowning man. Because even at the end of the day, if we feed all of the whales, or if we provide houses to so many different people, or establish 100 different hospitals, at the end of the day, all the people involved in those things that were helped somehow, they'll still have to die. They'll still have to leave their body. They won't get any permanent cure for diseases. Some new disease comes every year. There won't be any permanent stopping to old age. But if we give someone this spiritual knowledge that actually informs them that you're not this body, but you're an eternal part and parcel of God. So your duty is actually to serve God and be back in his eternal kingdom, in his eternal abode, no longer in this place of temporary bodies, birth, death, disease, and old age. Then they can actually benefit. So Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate satrachram hetunanena kunteya jagadviparivartate, that this material energy of mine, it's very difficult to overcome. But one who surrenders unto Krishna, no, different one? What is this one? Daivi hesha gunamayi mama maya duratiya. That this material energy of mine is very difficult to overcome. But one who surrenders unto Krishna can easily cross beyond it. So if we let any sort of materialistic ideas into our consciousness, then we won't actually be able to cross over this material energy, because Krishna himself is saying it's very difficult. So all of these different isms in the world, nationalism, this ism, this group, this cause, they're all centered on this idea of it is I, it is mine. So when we bring any of these identifications along with us into devotional service, or allow them more and more into our consciousness, we're just going to have a more difficult time crossing over this material ocean. But if we surrender unto Krishna, that means we let in Krishna's ideas into our consciousness. And when we speak, we don't speak about, as what's said in the verse, nonsense, which is all these different ideas that are stemming from this material platform of life, all these different isms and things. But if we speak about Krishna and glorifying the Lord and always chanting his holy name, then this material existence becomes very easy to cross over. So we want to always be hearing. It's one of the most important processes of devotional service. So we can hear from the scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. But if we begin to hear from other places, such as any nonsense talks that people are engaging in out just in materialistic life, then our consciousness becomes affected by that. Or if we want to hear some mundane music, then we'll just take on whatever qualities the mundane singer has in their own life and all of their problems that they have to deal with. We'll be allowing that into our consciousness. So anything in this material world, if we associate more and more with these material things and material sound vibration, we're taking on more of this idea of it is mine, it is I'm the body. I'll only endeavor to help things in relation to my body. But if we take on more transcendental sound vibration, then we'll realize I am actually Jiver Srupa Hoy Krishna Nityadas. I'm the servant of Krishna. So we'll actually be able to help we'll actually be able to help somebody. I was going to say we'd be able to help more living entities, but the point is that in material life, one can't help any living entity because they still have to die and take birth again and again and again. But if we associate with Krishna through this transcendental sound vibration, then we can actually help all living entities because we can understand that we are an eternal servant of Krishna. So are they. So we can help engage them in Krishna's service. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that those who are before the Lord, however, and who surrender unto him cannot be influenced by the deluding energy. Therefore, they are free from the misconception of it is I and it is mine. And therefore, they do not accept a false God or pose themselves as equal to the Supreme Lord. So if we keep Krishna in the center of our activities, then we won't have to be deluded by this material energy. And the safest place to be is engaged in kirtan, always chanting about the glories of the Lord. So if we're continuously endeavoring to bring others to Krishna consciousness, then that means we always have to be preaching about Krishna. And then that means we'll be safe from this material energy. But if we become a little bit comfortable and then want to take it easy and think, okay, well, maybe preaching is a little bit too much. If I go and speak something to this person, they might say something to me that I don't want to hear, and it gives me some bad conception of life. Well, then we're actually more likely to be in contact with this material idea of it is I, it is mine. We're more likely to have bad association by not preaching because we're more likely to associate with our own mind, which is materialistic enough to make anybody fall down. But if we go and speak to the materialist for the purpose of engaging them in Krishna's service, then we're actually much safer because Krishna is in the center of the whole interaction. They're holding Prabhupada's book and they're saying, why should I have this book with Krishna on it? And you're saying you should have this book with Krishna on it because Krishna is your best friend. And the whole center of the interaction is based on Krishna. But if we think, actually, I don't want to hear their nonsense and they're so much in Maya, if I go near them, I'm going to be in Maya, then we're going to have to deal with this mind. And he's not holding a book in his hand and saying, why should I take it? And we're not trying to give him a book. So it's more likely that we'll become more entangled in material life by putting ourselves in a more comfortable position or staying in our comfort zone. But if we try to tirelessly push on the mission of Krishna consciousness, then we can easily get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and we can be safe from this deluding material energy. Because in order to push on the mission of Krishna consciousness, one will have to always be thinking of Krishna, one will have to be speaking of Krishna, and one will have to be engaged in Krishna's service. So are there any questions or comments? Or realizations?
Hare Krishna. I liked your point about in striving to engage the mind. We can engage it in something that's already in the mind, or we can engage it in preaching. And I thought that was really nice. And that includes, you could preach to the mind. You can also preach to the other devotees that were around. So I found that point really helpful. And then also something that I've been meditating on often is how to increase more and more the hearing and chanting, and that being the medicine for all the issues that might go on, that someone might be struggling with, some addiction or something. Just the more you hear and the more you chant, or some desires that one might have. Addiction's kind of another thing, but some desires that one might have, if you keep hearing and chanting, you can get that higher taste. So been thinking about striving more and more for that higher taste. Thanks.
Thank you. It's a really nice point that just by hearing the Bhagavatam or hearing from Krishna, any challenges can be overcome. Any difficulties that seem gigantic can actually become very small because we're associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the more eager we are to hear from him, the more he allows us to actually hear about him. It's really amazing. So there's many verses and purports that explain this, but the more that we hear from the Bhagavatam, the easier it is to engage in devotional service because Krishna is pleased. Just like if we meet someone, if they ask about us, where we're from, what do we do, what's our family like, what are we interested in, we're very pleased and we're making a friend. We're happy about it. The same way when Krishna, who's the supreme person, sees that we want to know more about him personally, then he is also pleased and he makes it easier for us to know about him. So the more that we engage in hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam, the easier it is to hear more about the Lord. And we have to hear about something. So just like if you have a cup, it's going to be filled up with something. We have to hear about something. So if we're hearing about materialistic things, we'll just hear more and more materialistic things. But if we hear, I'm putting my hand here as like a meter. So here's 100%, here's 0. If we fill it up with things about Krishna, then we're good to go. We'll be satisfied and we'll only hear Krishna conscious things. But it's not just going to stay empty. So, okay, if I decrease my hearing, I'm not going to hear much from Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or about Krishna. It'll have to be filled up with something. So then we're going to hear more and more materialistic things. But if we fill up with Krishna conscious sound vibration, then we won't have to hear these bewildered nonsense talks that are spoken of here, which are all based on the platform of I and mine. So the best way to hear about these talks about Krishna is by associating with devotees and also associating with Srila Prabhupada specifically in the form of his books. He said, if you want to know me, read my books. So, and there's many nice biographies of Prabhupada, which are also wonderful to read. But he specifically said, if you want to know me, read my books. And he explained that when we're reading these books, it is personal instruction that we're getting. He is personally speaking to the devotee who is hearing from these transcendental literatures. And in this way, we can associate personally with Srila Prabhupada, who will instruct us personally. And he explains that, I remember one quote where he's saying, just read my books and all of your questions will be answered. And we can see that so many times. We have some question and we speak to the devotees about it. And then we say, okay, let's go consult one of Prabhupada's books. And even though we might have read it many, many times, we open it, read it again. And like this, the answer starts being explained. So the best way to hear about Krishna is through the association of devotees and specifically associating with the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, who is giving us the topmost knowledge of Krishna. And we can share that with others too, so that they can be saved from this deluding energy that's keeping us in the cycle of birth and death. Is there any other question or comment? Yes, Radha Damodar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I was wondering, is Krishna consciousness Krishna consciousness is very attractive and very pleasurable. I was wondering what is like the biggest reason why people don't take to it. They don't want to apply themselves to it.
Well, it's so sublime. Who wouldn't take to it? And as Maharaj explained before, the verse is stated that men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses, they don't actually want to hear about Krishna, but they glorify those who never worship Krishna, never have any interest in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can see these are people who are materially attached or in so much ignorance that their life is more or less like a dog or a hog. We can see there's a reason for each of those animals that's stated. The camel, dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. The camel, he's chewing on thorns and he thinks it's very delicious. But the taste that he's thinking he's relishing is actually the taste of his own blood. So that's like the materialist who's too much attached to sex life. They think, oh, this is very wonderful, but they're just destroying their mind, body, brain, the whole thing. They're completely destroying their human form of life. And then the hog, what is the reason for that one? I think he just wants to eat anything. So he goes on eating abominable things and he's thinking he's satisfied even in the filthiest condition. So like this, we can see it's a deep, dark ignorance that's keeping people from actually wanting to hear about the Lord and engage in his service. But they can easily be woken up from that ignorance simply by Harinam Sankirtan and giving them Srila Prabhupada's books. The second they take I saw one guy, this Asian boy at a school, and we had the Higher Taste book, and he was looking at it very quizzically, and he opened it up and he saw the picture of Krishna as a young cowherd boy with his lotus toe dipping into a river just a bit. And he just became ecstatic. He was just looking at it like this. He opened up the book and then he just had this huge smile and he was laughing. He was like, he's pointing at Krishna. He goes, what? Well, who is this? I said, that's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he goes, Supreme Personality of Godhead, so cool. So he took the higher taste. So people can be woken up very easily from this dark ignorance just by just by even touching one of Prabhupada's books or reading a word of them. So we can go on doing our best to spread this Sankirtan movement. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.